cheating on your wife with mine. I will burn your life to the ground. Back in the early 2000s, I started to suspect something was off in my marriage. My two kids, ages 4 and 6, were often talking about spending the day at my wife's parents' house. While this in itself wasn't suspicious, the fact that they were doing it almost every day, considering that their grandparents lived about 90 minutes away, made me question the situation. Something wasn't right. When I asked my wife about it, she denied it, but I always knew she wasn't a good liar. So, I decided to start monitoring the mileage on her car. To my surprise, she was driving over 400 miles more a week. I knew something was going on. One morning, I found a note with her AOL password written on it next to the computer. I couldn't resist. I logged into her account and found emails between her and her best friend from college, where they discussed how my wife was regularly sleeping with one of her high school ex-boyfriends. The emails contained no details about him, but my wife also mocked his wife, making fun of how she had gained weight after having kids. I printed out the emails and kept them as evidence that I still needed to know the details, so I called a friend who was a police officer, and he suggested I contact a guy he knew who had left the force to become a private investigator. Ron was great. I paid his fee and gave him the emails and the little I knew about my wife's activities. He uncovered exactly what she was doing. His detailed report included photos and timestamps, showing how she would take the kids to her parents' house, then meet the guy for lunch, and then they'd go to a cheap motel for a few hours, after which she would pick up the kids and return home. At this point, I hired a divorce lawyer. My parents had cheated, and the consequences destroyed my childhood and my siblings. It was completely unacceptable to me that I also asked Ron to find out anything he could about the guy. Ron delivered. I found out his name, Bob, that he was married with 3 kids, and worked as a vice president of sales at my father-in-law's company. HMM.by now, I had my lawyer prepare the divorce papers. I also asked Ron for more copies of his report and one more thing I wanted him to do for me. The same day my wife was notified of the divorce papers at work, I had Ron meet with Bob's wife and show her everything he had uncovered. She had the right to know what her dear husband had been up to. What she did with that information was up to her. Although my wife's infidelity didn't really affect my divorce proceedings, Bob's wife made him pay. According to publicly available court documents and other related proceedings, she emptied their joint account, took the kids, and left. Once her father found out what he had done, Bob was fired, and since his in-laws owned the house he and his wife were living in, he was also evicted. Their divorce was ugly. There were many fights, both inside and apparently outside of court. I heard Bob even went to the house and started arguing with his wife, and the situation escalated to the point where her brother had to intervene, and Bob broke his nose. There were restraining orders, more police reports, criminal charges, arrests, and so on that I can't find Bob online anymore. Last I heard, he left the state, and his ex-wife did well for herself, working at her father's company and eventually taking over when he retired. As for me, my ex and I got along well enough, not getting involved in anything beyond the kids. Now that both are adults, I don't speak to her anymore. I don't hate her or anything like that, but I only care in the context that she is the mother of my children, and that's important to them, nothing more.